Hey, I just want to make a quick video. I want to discuss. I had a really good question about does communism, well, some guy who's claiming to coming from a communist country is claiming, which he doesn't seem to know anything about communism, which is basically probably be my age or a little bit older. And he makes this claim that isn't communism and socialism, aren't they more Christian because it has to do with giving to the poor and to the needy, things like that? And the answer is no. The reason being is that Christianity teaches personal responsibility, taking care of your own family. That's throughout Timothy, and the Psalms really talk about that, and Proverbs. And also, there's a difference between giving through the Mosaic Law. They made provisions to give to the poor, but that was voluntary. Christianity, Jesus, all throughout the talks about giving to the poor, the orphans, the widows. Totally true. Also voluntary. It says you'll be rewarded for doing that, but this is a voluntary action. The difference being between the communism believes you have no right of ownership. The government takes everything and redistributes it. It's similar to socialism. Is the same situation. And as the West has progressively towards atheism, it's got more liberal, more socialist. There's no way you can call this in the United States or Europe for that matter capitalist. It's more crony capitalist because the lobbyist groups advocate for policies that specifically help the monopolies and don't help the small businesses or individuals. They're able to provide regulations and taxations that they can manipulate through lawyership and through lawyers, what have you, and through tax incentives so they have an unfair advantage. That's why they have such monopolies. That's why Amazon, Google, Facebook. I remember, I'm crazy, but I remember in the 90s when it's strange because I remember when the America used to care, they sued the Microsoft for being a monopoly, for putting Office on Microsoft exclusively on Windows computers. And that's why we have open office and all sorts of other reasons, other things. Like Microsoft never really recovered from that. However, can you really say that about Apple? Apple computers. Well, it's crazy because we can get in. I don't want to get too far into this, but it's funny how people praise Apple. Apple not only defies the charger that they pay a small fine for having a lightning charger, when obviously clearly USB Type-C is a superior charger, and they switch over to their iPads to do that. They pay a small fine just so they can be exclusive, and their devices aren't compatible with other things. On top of that, their software much harder works with other things. FaceTime just recently sends a hyperlink to that. They're very anti-competitive, and they and I don't want to get too bash on Apple, but Apple is a monopoly. Their app store can only be used to, and they make their products in China. I use some Apple products. I'm back and forth with Apple, but that's not the point. The point is that these companies, they used to care about monopolies. Now it's whatever because they're liberal. They're on the same team. So I don't really understand the current monopolies. Sorry, I went off a rap on Apple. I don't want to be anti-Apple. I just mean the whole point was that monopolies in general. And think of Amazon, Amazon Web Service. I do think that Google obviously has a problem with, although Google, I don't like how they manipulate their search. That's clearly a problem, but they do have a lot of open source projects, which I do like. I do think cryptocurrency will democratize the internet, so that will be a good thing, but it's hard to know what will happen in the future. But the point of the matter is that it wasn't really talking about monopolies, it was specifically about personal responsibility. And communism and socialism do not advocate. Paying your taxes is not charity. Paying your taxes is forced obligation to. If you don't pay your taxes, they arrest you. They come with violence. The government is a monopoly on violence. That is hands down 101 civics. If you don't do what the government that says, they will come with violence. And most people, if they have a freedom-based government with voluntarism based on Judeo-Christian ethos, then yeah, it's a pretty great place to live. It's called Western society. But if they have a government that redistributes wealth and owns the means of production and has no ownership of private property, then yeah, you have a pretty crappy, terrible place to live that ultimately will lose. Well, ultimately what happens, and happens to every single communist country, is people have no reason to work. And they have no incentive to work. So shortages and price controls, and then what happens is, again, this should be very basic. I don't know why they don't teach this in school. I grew up in the 80s. We understood communism very well. So what actually happens is they run out of resources. Then they have to have killing fields to reduce the amount of people using the same resources. It's just what happens. That's why we have free market capitalism, and that's what's the difference between free market capitalism and communism. So this utopian worldview never works, and Western society was only created through Christian, through specifically Protestantism. This is not far-reaching. This is not like I'm grading. This is read John Locke, read Adam Smith. Oh boy, I can't think. The inventor of capitalism. It's not coming to me. Read Karl Marx. Religion was like one of the main things he had to get rid of so that they believe in the collective. Because people were believing in the family unit. One of the point was to destroy the family unit. So continue to pray, continue to read the Bible, and you'll find Jesus.